Hello, and welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp, joined as always by Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello.
And this is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was like, wow, you're taking the dramatic pause to a new level on this one.
I was reading our topics, and for some reason, I just expected myself to
to say, and sometimes other stuff.
Right.
You thought, because we did hire
alter
someone.
ego.
We were thinking of hiring someone exclusively just for that sentence,
Right.
or a portion of a sentence.
Right.
You know, we pay them like $50 an hour just to walk in and go, and sometimes other stuff.
But we didn't have enough Patreon donations, so we had to give them a pink
we had to
slip.
fire them, and then you thought they were still here, so you just stared blankly at me as I waited for you to say your line. Line! That'd be great if you yelled line. Line! So, everyone, thanks for joining us. Thanks to all of you who joined us for the live stream version of Common Censored this past Sunday. If anyone
So we
wants...
are calling that Common Censored.
I'm calling that Common Censored
Okay.
live. Common Censored live. You gotta add the live.
This is also live. I'm doing this right now.
Live stream. Never cross the streams. Live stream. But anyway, yes, we did it this past Sunday. Thanks to all who joined us. If you want to watch it after the fact, it's still at youtube.com/momentofclarity. Okay, shall we just go into it?
Do it.
All right. So we did talk on the live stream, and I'll keep talking about it, tweeting about Biden's transition, which basically shows that he's not going to be progressive at all. So I'm not going to get into that aspect right now. But what I would like to talk about is, so Trump is fighting, obviously, the fact that he lost, and most of you heard me say this already, but yes, the election is not correct in certain ways, but most of them actually favor Trump. The millions of people purged around the country. I'll mention that again in a moment about 538. But so if all the votes were actually counted, if all the people who were suppressed and knocked off the rolls were actually counted, Biden would have won by a lot more. So Trump saying this isn't legit is kind of laughable, because really it's more illegitimate towards him.
Right.
But anyway, so this is proving a few things. Some more important than others. Some the mainstream media is willing to talk about, and some they're not. But what they're not really willing to talk about in a certain way is how unstable and feeble this shows our system is when someone wants to hold on to power. They basically just say, no, I didn't lose. And there's almost no Republicans that have stood up and said this thing's over. There's a couple, like Mitt Romney, but there aren't many. And one that did, governor of Ohio, said this is over and Biden is the president-elect, and he's a Republican. So Trump just tweeted out, immediately after he did that, Trump tweeted, the run for governor next time around will be hotly contested. Who's going to run against his, and this thing gets viewed by 80 million people or whatever, one tweet. And so now every Republican is fucking terrified to say anything against Trump.
Well, so, and this, this is something that I don't know if we've talked about this on the live stream or what, but I've gotten a few questions from folks asking if I think that Trump is trying to stage a coup.
He's trying to hold on to power.
Well,
I
right.
don't know if you call that staging a coup.
No,
but
because staging a coup requires a lot of planning and intelligence that Trump doesn't have. I think Trump is just a sore loser. But I also think that Trump is more interested in looking good, and looking
his ego.
Yeah. So he's not going. This is not about the morals of the situation. This is not about I deserve this and it's the principle of the matter. No, he's just a sore fucking loser. It's like a kid who's like, I didn't want to lose the football game. But when he realizes that he will look better by leaving, he'll leave. When he realizes that there's nobody really backing him up, yes, there are Republicans that aren't saying this is over, but there's no Republican that's willing to die on that hill. because ultimately the system is the Republicans and the Democrats together saying that, oh, we want this, peaceful transition of power, and we're all about the democracy of the United States of America. And at the end of the day, that is far more important to keep that facade, that mirage democracy intact than letting Trump play this stupid little game of I won. I don't want to give up my binky.
Well, yeah, you're right. The business community at the end of the day just wants a smooth transition so that they can keep exploiting your average Americans, red, blue, doesn't matter what state you're in, doesn't matter who you voted for. However, they do run into the individuals that make up this kind of ruling elite, in that the ones who are politicians fear that Trump tweet and the Trump wrath, whether he's in office or out. I mean, once he gets out of office, his Twitter will be equally powerful, just about. So yes, they want an easy transition of power so that the business community, the corporate community can keep going unfettered. However, they're more afraid. The reason almost none of them have spoken out and said, look, this thing's over, is because they're more afraid for their own position. They're afraid they lose their next election if they come out against Trump. So it's the selfish versus the kind of business world.
And I totally get that, but there's a difference between being afraid to say, oh yeah, Biden won, and saying, yeah, let's fucking stand on the barricades together, Trump,
Right.
let's do this.
Right.
And so I think that the idea that there will be a coup where the military backs Trump and Biden is locked out of the White House or whatever the fuck is very unrealistic. And I'm not saying
I agree.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't be concerned about what's going on right now. I think we should always be wary of the empire butt scooting us towards annihilation. But I think that it's at this point, the idea that our primary concern is a coup, I think, is misplaced. The primary concern should be what Biden has planned, and also to your point, Lee, about Trump is going to be just as powerful after he leaves.
I didn't say just as powerful. I said Twitter's going to be as powerful as it is.
Right. I mean, as a public person, there's a lot of in terms of that issue, it is really in the hands of corporate media to shut that down. I'm not saying that they will. I don't expect them to. But hypothetically, let's say that, Trump leaves office, he continues to tweet or whatever, but corporate media never mentions it. They never say, oh, and former President Trump tweeted today.
Right.
But here's the thing.
They created him.
Right. And here's the thing. They're going to continue talking about him just because it's good for ratings, because he's so fucking absurd. And that shit, just like, if you've ever watched the movie Network, that shit is good for ratings. The crazier something is,
right,
the more outlandish it is, then the better ratings it gets. So they're going to continue to prop up Trump, even though if they just stopped, then he would fade considerably, I think. Because, of course, as you pointed out, he wouldn't exist as an entity, much less as a president, if it weren't for the fact that corporate media had propped him up in the first place.
Yeah, corporate media created him, including the Hillary campaign said they wanted to prop him up, right, because they thought he'd be easy to beat. So, corporate media created him, and they could continue to give him power, especially for another run for office. But, and by the way, this is not just... we talk a lot about how awful Biden is, so...
Well, that was my point. We should be focusing on what Biden's doing.
Yeah, which we have. We did a lot of the live stream was about his transition and the shit fest of horrible swamp creatures he's put into play.
I meant the collective we, not just you and me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, folks...
So yeah, I just didn't want to repeat everything we did on the live stream, but in a very related yet kind of opposite... opposite take, but not exactly the same topic. Trump is right now, outside of trying to hold on to power, he's doing several things at the Pentagon, some of which I've already talked about in a moment of clarity. He canceled the the Secretary of Defense. He
Canceled.
I know, I was kidding. He fired the Secretary of Defense and put in his own yes man who fucking loves him and will do anything. However, here's the thing. The main reason it seems that he wanted to do this and he's so furious about, doing this right now is because he's trying to bring troops home, and the deep state, and this shows how powerful the deep state is. The deep state, and there's quotes to this effect, which I'm going to cover this more probably on a Redacted tonight once I have time to really go through all the nitty gritty of it. But there are higher ups from the Pentagon who have basically left, retired, or whatever, and said that Trump thinks there are 200 troops only remaining in Syria, and that's not true. There's like 900 or 1,000, but they lie to him. The Pentagon lies to him. They move troops around so they can say, oh, yeah, they're not in that area anymore, and really they're just a mile off to the side ready to, they do that. It's a shell game to basically make Trump, the president of the fucking United States, think that he's withdrawn troops when he hasn't withdrawn any or as many as he thinks. And so now he's trying to withdraw even more troops. He's trying to withdraw all the troops from Afghanistan. And our corporate media, they're more livid about this, really, the fact that he's going to withdraw troops from Afghanistan and some other places, as well as Syria. They're more upset about that than they are about the fact that apparently, and this just came out today, that Trump had a meeting over the last few days where he said, give me options to strike Iran's nuclear facilities, which, for those who don't know, Iran's nuclear facilities are exclusively to power the country. It's really been proven again and again by weapons inspectors and stuff that their nuclear power is used to power the country. And if they wanted to have weapons of mass destruction, they would already have them. So what would this do? Well, it would knock out power for, millions of people who are already
under extreme economic stress,
who are already struggling from our economic war against them. And so it really is horrific. I mean, people would die. Many people would die. You'd have elderly would likely die. Babies would likely die. He was stopped from doing it. He was talked out of it by, the adults in the room. So this is this two-sided thing here where you have a bit of a maniac as president, although most of our presidents are maniacs. Most of them, maybe all of them, are sociopaths. And so he's been talked out of this awful strike, but he's also been lied to about the number of troops in areas so that the American military machine can keep trained murderers in these areas.
Well, and that really speaks to the, to how the president relates to the military and what the military-industrial complex does and can do without the oversight or the concern of the president. And of course, when Trump came into office, he basically told the military, do your thing, whatevs. But the idea that...
so they started dropping more bombs than ever.
Right. Yeah. But the idea that, his predecessors, Obama, Bush, had this, this very tight grip on the military and knew exactly how we're steering them all the time. And
because they read the daily briefings.
Right. That's not, it's just not how it works. The military is its own entity at this point. And, certainly not Congress, but not the president really either, has a firm grasp on what the military is doing at any given time.
And they only get $1 trillion a year, and they often lose things like Black Hawk helicopters and buildings. They don't know how many buildings they have.
Right. So this is, when
I haven't lost a building in years.
I've been lost in buildings. But yeah, so I think that, this just really speaks to the power of the military industrial complex and really, speaks to the fact that this is an empire that is driven by the war machine, and is driven by the profit that war machine creates and demands. So I think, that this is something else to highlight. And also, circling back, this is also why the military would would not want to die on Trump's hill either, because they're just as happy with Biden as they are with Trump. It doesn't matter to them. The war machine moves on with someone like Biden. Now, I could see the argument if someone who was anti-war was being elected into office, then I could see that there would be some friction
Right.
there. But Biden is a fucking 100% war hawk. There's nothing he's going to do that is going to rein in the empire. So the military is looking at this and being like, all right, well.
Well, and this is why you should find these things so scary, is because imagine that finally the change happens, and someone like Bernie Sanders or someone even more aware of our horrific foreign policy were to somehow overcome all of the hurdles and achieve the presidency and be kind of in control of the empire. We now have learned that the Pentagon would thwart their efforts to try and create peace. We know that that right now Trump is proving that holding on to power is a definite possibility in terms of, like, if this election had been much closer. Let's say Bernie Sanders was running against Trump and had only won by one state. We know that Trump could have thwarted that win, as he's trying to do right now, but he's lost so severely that he can't do it. And so it shows how the system.
If the military had a reason to despise or to not want
one
the
of
incoming
candidates.
president,
right? But and this speaks to the idea that there is no deep state, or the deep state is just a bunch of bureaucrats really trying to do their best. And here's the thing: many of them are, because there's a lot of agencies that are not about war. There are agencies to deal with a pandemic. There are agencies to like the meteorologists and shit that are predicting weather patterns and warning us of hurricanes. Like, there are agencies within the government that are doing important things, which is the idea of government to begin with. If you were to remove it from the fact that we're this massive empire killing people all over the world, and just say, okay, random imaginary country, what's the point of the government? Well, it'd do all these things, right? It makes everything from making sure the trash is collected to making sure that they can deal with a pandemic. But there's been a book written about how the deep state is not a real thing, basically, by Michael Lewis, called The Fifth Risk. And I like Michael Lewis in general because he wrote about The Big Short. He wrote about all these kind of complicated exploitation and extraction done by Wall Street that most people don't want to dip their head into because it's too complicated, so you don't even hear it talked about. So I kind of like Michael Lewis. But I read the cover and the back of this book. So I haven't read the book, I will say. And maybe he gives at least a nod to this idea. But the front of the book says, I had thought that the deep state, basically it says something like, I thought the deep state was a thing, but I realized it's just people trying to make sure our country runs appropriately at the end of the day, whatever. But it's like,
appropriately, if you're...
It's like, yes, you have agencies that are warning us about hurricanes. You also have agencies that, and for example, ostensibly, FEMA is supposed to help people in a disaster, but they're like catastrophic if you read about the shit they did in like Katrina and stuff like that.
Or Puerto Rico. Or Sandy.
So these agencies may have a lot of people that are trying to do, A, B, and C, but the top echelon is generally these sociopaths that are, support the American empire and all of its goals. And we now see this with the military. This is the Pentagon deciding withdrawing troops, even a small number, could hurt America's interests, which are to destroy these other countries, to sink Syria into just a failed state where people are dying daily of starvation and unclean water. That's our goal. That's basically our goal. And they think that pulling, the 900 troops out of Syria would be bad for that goal. So they lie to the president and say, oh, yeah, we've removed those troops, and then just move them off to the side or whatever, and then move them back in. And that is the deep state in a nutshell.
Well, and also that quote from what's his name again?
Michael Lewis?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's the front of his book.
Well, whatever. That speaks to a complete misunderstanding of how these systems work. It's kind of like saying that, well, there are people that are good that work for the police. Okay, but that doesn't excuse the fact that the institution as a whole is a horrific institution that is built on the oppression of the many and the protection of the few, and the protection of the oppressors. And it's also, and this is kind of like I've had folks argue or debate this point. You know, the saying "all cops are bastards," ACAB, is a fundamental commentary on the institution of policing. That when you put on that uniform, you are putting on the uniform of the protector of the oppressor. You are basically saying that I am a pawn for the empire. I'm a pawn for this fascist white supremacist entity, and it is my job to ensure that they maintain power, that they maintain their order, instead of in the face of calls for accountability and justice and human rights. So when we say all cops are bastards, what we're saying is that the institution creates bastards out of anybody who walks into that uniform. And that regardless if you're trying to, change it from the inside, you can't. The institution as a whole is rotten. And yes, there are, there's like the nice police officer that was up in, I believe it was Oregon, who went out and he was the police chief for his small town, and he went out there and had like a Black Lives Matter sign and stuff. Okay, great. That's one dude. And I'm not trying to diminish what he's done, but the idea is that he cannot change the entirety of policing by holding a Black Lives Matter sign. That's not how it works. And the idea that somebody who works for the State Department can, go to work and talk about empire and talk about, let's talk about I don't know, like Noriega, or let's talk about what we did to Allende or whatever, and change the system, change the entire State Department with those conversations. It's cool that person's doing that, but that is naive, and it's not how the fucking world works. And so I think it's important to recognize that, sure, good people are everywhere, just like fucking assholes. It's just the assholes run this shit. The assholes have structured this system, and they hold the reins, so that if you're back in the back of the carriage being like, hey, I have a good idea, it doesn't matter, because that's not what's holding the reins. And I'm not saying this to discourage people who have jobs in government to fucking quit and say, fuck it, I don't care. But understand the limitations of working within the system to change the system.
Well, and there are differences between, different agencies and departments. So, like, obviously, there's a department that is in charge of administering food stamps to people. Now, does that mean that if you work at the food stamp department, you're an awful human being? No. It means that department is good because it's trying to deal with the harms of capitalism and the harms of our country. It's trying to keep people alive who would be dying because of this, horrific system. And I don't have any problem with that. I don't have any problem with you working there. We need to work to get to a point where food stamps aren't necessary, because we have a more equal system where people aren't struggling like that. But the department that that hands out the food stamps or administers the food stamps is not the one that gets that is run by these sociopaths. That's kind of like their little side project, so that you don't pay attention to what's being done in the State Department and being done in the Pentagon and being done in the places that really are the true aim of the empire. And so here's a quote from I'm not just picking on Michael Lewis. I think this is the view of a lot of people that and he's kind of helping that view of a lot of people that don't really think about the larger aims of the empire. The quote from him says, I think it's also on the book, "What are the consequences if the people given control over our government have no idea how it works?" And so he's talking about all the risks of things that could happen. Let's say our nuclear material isn't correctly watched after. And it's like, because the people don't know what they're doing. It's like, yeah, I do want that material watched after correctly. I'm not saying, fucking fire everybody who everybody who watches after a national park to make sure you're not burning down trees. It's not like I want them fired. It's saying that you have those departments in order to basically keep a system running so that it can achieve the true aims of kind of the American empire.
Yeah, well, and I also think that the argument that, and this was the argument with Hillary, for instance. Well, she's been doing this for like 40 years. It's a hell of a crime spree.
Right. She's not in the department that hands out food stamps. That's not where Hillary works.
Well, no, but even and the thing, I mean, there's a lot of layers of issues here, but I think like the argument that you have to understand exactly how this works in order to be in that job, well, that only perpetuates the corruption. It only perpetuates the damage, the oppression, and the destruction. So yeah, let's say that you work for the Forestry Service and you understand that we have to log our forest because, hey, we need paper products. Great that you understand that, but you obviously don't
Right.
fucking understand climate change, you fucking twit. So I think that like, okay, that argument is used to prop up and to and to continue the system as it stands, and that's that is the problem in and of itself. And yes, if you work for the government and you are doing good work and you're trying to make a difference, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying that the system is structured so that these good shifts do not happen on a larger scale. And that the way to make those shifts on a larger scale is really to do these things outside the confines of the system, and thereby force the system to shift in a otherwise it'll buckle and deteriorate. And that's the only way that these significant shifts have happened in the past, is that it's become politically untenable to not do these things. So I think, if you work for the food stamp, whatever, that is, that if you work for and give out food stamps to people, great. But this does not excuse the system as a whole.
And the final point I'll make on this before we move on, right now you're seeing something that the government should have a good response for, COVID-19, and it's just been catastrophic in this country. And a good portion of that is because a lot of the people that run our government, maybe most of them at the top and Congress, much of Congress, don't give a fuck. I mean, they have proven they don't give a fuck. One out of every 33 people in this country have now gotten COVID-19, and that's by the numbers of people who've gotten tested. So it's probably, who knows how much less than that, meaning more than that.
That's insane.
What is it?
That's insane.
Yeah, 1 out of every 33 people, and then I mean, we're headed towards 1 million deaths. It's just crazy. You and I know people who've gotten it. We know one person who likely passed away from it. And these people are sociopaths, so it's all about their self-interest. So they just don't. I'm talking about the ones at the top. Obviously, there are plenty of good health workers and everything that are trying their best, but the people at the top don't give a fuck. And it's amazing.
Well, and this is exactly how the system works, right? It relies on people who are on the bottom rungs who do care, because they're the ones who are faced with people's pain. Emergency room doctors and other health workers and quote unquote essential workers. They're the ones who are making the system look like if the system could look good at all, they're the ones who are making it do so, because they are the ones that are actually trying to help people, while the weight, the inertia of the system is trying to push down on people as much as it possibly can, because that's how it's structured. So yeah, the healthcare workers and all of these people are the ones that are the only silver lining to this whole shitstorm, and it's also how you have the Democrats and the Republicans going up there and being like, God bless our healthcare workers, and then doing nothing to support them, because again they can create this sort of facade, this mirage of us caring, when in reality what they could actually do, what they have the power to do, I don't know, universal healthcare or a universal basic income, they won't fucking do, because they don't actually want to make these larger shifts in the system, but they can do the window dressing of God bless healthcare workers.
Yeah, and people say, well, it's even worse to have things shut down because people are killing themselves, people lose their jobs and their ability to feed their family and everything, and it's like, yeah, that should be dealt with. That should be dealt with by the government as well. Like the government should have an actual, CARE Act or whatever the hell they're calling it, that gives people, universal basic income until this is over, or whatever the fuck needs to happen. You could deal with that so people aren't killing themselves. That's not an excuse for it. Well, we should all be killing ourselves with COVID-19 so that we don't kill ourselves from losing work. No, that's not. You shouldn't be forced to make that choice.
Right, and I've seen ads already with people, pushing these stories, these feel-good stories like, oh, Bill wanted to get back to work so that he could buy Christmas presents for his family. It's like, he shouldn't have to fucking cheat death, you fucking psychopath, just to buy a present for his kid. Like, that's fucking insane.
Just to buy a fucking coffee maker that sings to you at the same time, or whatever the crap garbage is we buy each other. Okay, so let's get to some more topics. Real quick, I want to let everybody know that, let's see, you join us over at patreon.com/commoncensored. Several of you have joined up in the past week. Thank you so much.
Woo!
You make this show possible. We're not funded by anything else other than you. Patreon.com/commoncensored. There won't be extra content this week because we have to run, but almost every week we do extra content over there for the members.
And feel free to, if you've just joined, feel free to check out the content that has previously been posted.
Yeah, you can go. If you were to join right now, you get all the previous extra content, which
all
is
of it.
Weeks and weeks and months and months. Eleanor's movie is at hardroadofhope.com.
New website.
Brand new website. It's won all kinds of awards. It's
Not the
great
website, the movie.
Documentary. Yeah, it's a great documentary. So please check it out. hardroadofhope.com. Are we doing a live stream this weekend? We'll say 50-50.
Don't put me on the spot or
All right.
anything.
50-50 chance we're doing a live
We
stream.
should have talked about this offline.
All right. 8 p.m. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Sunday, youtube.com/moment of clarity. Even if we don't do one, there are previous live streams you can watch, one from this past Sunday. Do you want to talk about Jen's event for a moment?
Yeah, so real quick, a very good friend of mine and a badass journalist, an indigenous media creator, has an event happening this week. It's called the 3 R's, which is Realize, Recognize, and Reconciliation.
Oh, I was hoping it was a pirate thing. The 3 R's!
I mean, sure, yes. So get your handy-dandy eye patch and head on over to Crushing Colonialism. Sorry, let me start over. crushingcolonialism.org. Check out the calendar. It's happening. It was going on yesterday. It's happening today, Tuesday the 17th, Wednesday the 18th, Thursday the 19th, and Friday the 20th.
So is this like a multimedia, like speakers and art and stuff?
So it's basically everything from Native 101 to getting into the nitty gritty of Indigenous rights, missing and murdered Indigenous women, theft of Indigenous children, environmental justice, healthcare disparities, all kinds of issues that folks should look into with regards to the Indigenous communities around Turtle Island. So if you are interested,
which is America, for those who don't know,
it's the whole
what the Indigenous call
North America. And so if you are interested, check out crushingcolonialism.org. There's a lot of rad panelists and speakers that are going to be a part of this, and it's a really good thing to look into, just even if you're not familiar with Indigenous issues, really for any reason, just check it out.
And even if you don't have time to enjoy the event, I believe there's a way to donate there as well. So
there is. You can donate again at crushingcolonialism.org.
Okay, we'll tell you some more about where you can find our stuff at the end here, but let's move on to real quick. I couldn't skip over this story because it just it blows my mind.
I thought you had written this wrong.
Yeah, it looks like a fake number. It looks like someone was like, this is funny. I'll just put 90,000 as a joke. The AP, along with other media outlets, is reporting that Boy Scouts of America now have close to 90,000 sexual assault claims against them. 90,000. 90,000. And these are the ones that have come forward, meaning clearly over 100,000, maybe double that, maybe 3 times that. I mean, it's fucking, it's mind blowing. And I used to do stand up about this and say how insane it is, because why does the organization still fucking exist?
I know.
I don't care if they taught your kid to whittle. This should not exist. It doesn't.
Trust me, you can learn how to whittle without being sexually assaulted. I myself have learned how to whittle without being sexually assaulted.
And I mean, just fucking think about this organization for a moment, okay? It is. Let's take 12 or 20 or whatever the number is, little boys, and let's send them off into the woods with a strange, lonely man who wants to spend his time for a weekend alone with little boys, and while they're in little outfits. And sure, that's going to go fine. Maybe 1 out of 5, maybe 4 out of 5 times. Maybe that's a guy who genuinely just a child educator. He likes teaching them how to survive, how to be a leader, all those things. But if it's, I'm making up these numbers, but if let's say 1 out of 5 times, it's a fucking pedophile who wants to be alone with a troop of boys. Like, it's so insane. It's like, let's just set up a pedophile, like, perfect machine, and let's hope that a large percentage of the time, what is going to happen doesn't happen. I mean,
well, right. And I mean, I don't know. Because the idea of teaching kids to be outdoors and all that shit is a very important and powerful idea. So I'm not really sure why the Boy Scouts in particular are like a haven for pedophiles.
I'll tell you why. It's because let's be honest. Pedophiles are majority men, and in order to achieve pedophilia, they have to be alone with children, which is not like, there aren't that many places where a guy alone is alone with a group of children. Whereas if you had, and I don't even think, until recently, I don't even think they've allowed this until recently. So meaning they started in the 1940s or something, and it's just been men. And it's like, look, women should be allowed in this organization. They should help run it. They should be fucking standing there with the guy who's teaching the boys how to make a fire. If you wanted to have this organization, it should not be a guy alone with children. Look at sheer percentages. And honestly, like, if you have a truly active pedophile, he's looking for organizations where he gets to be alone with children. This is going to be the perfect one.
It's easier than becoming a priest.
Yeah, it's easier than becoming a priest. You don't have to go to school for it. I mean, it's just fucking... It's heartbreaking. It's awful. And the fact that this organization still exists, yes, they claim to be bankrupt because they don't want to pay the victims, but that doesn't mean they're not still functioning. I mean, I was in an airport before the pandemic, and I saw a fucking Boy Scouts troop march through the airport.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. If you're claiming that you're bankrupt, then you have to cease operations, I would think.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
Apparently not.
You say you're bankrupt, and you keep going.
And you keep destroying people's lives,
and you keep collecting money. And here's the other thing I say in my stand-up. Obviously I'm not giving the joke portion of it, but is that, okay, if you really want this thing to continue like this, then at least the parents need to be informed. And I don't mean informed like, oh, they see a media article here or there. I mean informed like the Boy Scouts of America reps come to your house and say, your boy has expressed interest, or, you have expressed interest in Boy Scouts of America for your child. We just want to let you know 90,000 sexual assault claims have been put forward against us. So your kid may learn how to make a fire, and then there's a chance he's going to get touched and grabbed in a way that'll fuck him up for life.
Yeah.
And then let them make their choice.
Right.
And then let them make their choice.
Right. You should have all of the information in order to make an educated decision. I agree. Yeah.
So for any of you parents out there, consider this a warning. Please look into Boy Scouts of America before you sign your kid up.
I would also say, obviously this is incredibly horrific. I'd say even outside of these sexual assault issues, the Boy Scouts of America are known for being a very conservative organization, which incidentally is, I guess, not that surprising because it's usually the conservative organizations that end up being fucking pederasts. But
fair point.
But so the idea, like, the idea that the Boy Scouts of America is like the only place where you can learn to be outdoorsy is just not true. There are lots of organizations, and I can't remember the name of them, but a friend of mine who has a couple of kids had talked to me about it, and I guess I wasn't paying that much attention because I don't remember the name of them. But they're like outdoors organizations that also teach people about, or teach kids about, like the importance of being one with the ecosystem, and you know, about how we have to care for the land, and we are part of the land, and like a much more symbiotic way of teaching people, teaching kids to be outdoors. And I think that, like, so if you are somebody who's like, oh, but I have a kid that wants to be like outdoorsy and the Boy Scouts seems like a good option, there are other options out there. Like, there are other outdoors people that walk among you and and are interested in teaching your kids without fucking them up for life.
I did one when I was like 15 or something. Me and my brothers did them like one summer of our, when we were teenagers, called one's called Longacre, if it's still around. But for one thing, these are when you're a teenager, which teenagers are, you know, once you get to 15, and you're more likely to you know, not just allow things to happen to you. You know, that doesn't mean it can't happen. It absolutely can, but it's a little less likely than a tiny child. But on top of that, there were several, I don't know if they were called counselors, whatever, guides or whatever, that were, you know, this is multiple weeks out in the woods, and there's several guides. This is men and women. You have both genders there. It'd be very tough for one of these, you know, whatever they were in their 30s or something, guides, to just be alone with a, you know, 13-year-old boy a lot without the fucking other guides being like, what the fuck's going on? Like, it helps stop this shit. So
right, as does, I mean, I think the important thing is, you know, at the core, there has to be a system of accountability, on behalf of the organization, on behalf of the kids, or, you know, young folks, whatever. Because I mean, I went to you know, summer camps and stuff like that were, I mean, a lot of them were softball based, so they were predominantly women. But there was always a way to talk about something that was wrong. And then, you know, I remember one, and I'm just bringing this up as a for instance. I remember there was this one kid who was talking, who wanted to talk to me about, you know, another kid that had, you know, hurt them, not sexually, but just hurt them, you know, physically, like I don't remember what it was, punched them or something like that. And so I forwarded this message to the head coach, and then, you know, she went on to forward that message, and there was like a system of accountability there, and it made not only the kid feel safe who would come to me and was scared to come to me and tell me about it, but it also made me feel good to know that my, you know, the head coach hadn't just been like, fuck it, you know, kids do that kind of thing or whatever. And of course, you know, getting punched by a kid is obviously not the same thing as getting, you know, sexually assaulted by an adult, but I think like this concept of having structures in place to ensure that there's accountability, that, oh, if somebody comes to me with this information, I know that I can go to this person and something will be done, as opposed to, and I'm sure that this is probably the case in the Boy Scouts, people told people that it was happening, and they were like, and they just shut them down, shut them up, and nothing ever went anywhere, until it, you know, explodes like it is right now. And so those systems of accountability, if they're not built into that organization, then that is a huge red flag. And that is also something that, as like a parent, you know, as somebody who does childcare, as anybody, that should be something that you definitely ask about and get more information about if those accountability systems exist.
Right. So in these last 10 minutes, I really want to get to your article about freedom of speech. I think it's very important and an interesting discussion that you don't hear in the mainstream, really.
Well, I do want to, because you already mentioned that you were going to talk about the 538 thing. So I want to get to that, and I will just drop a little teaser here about the article that I wrote. It's up on my website, artkillingapathy.com. I believe that it might also be going up on Popular Resistance, and it's up on Lee Camp's website, leecamp.com. But basically, this article talks about the complicated issue of free speech, and that, you know, ultimately the idea of shutting down any sort of any sort of speech that you don't like or that is harmful to I guess like that is derogatory towards a certain group of people, that is not how we are going to win justice or win freedom or human rights, because trying to play whack-a-mole with all like the Nazi blogs or the white supremacist tweets or what have you is a losing game. And the conversation should more be about what we allow in the public sphere. So one of the examples that I give is that a few years ago, CNN was having a conversation about the alt-right, and on the lower third of the screen, it just had a question that, no context. It just said, "Are Jews people?" That question should not be on fucking national television. The lower third should have said something like, discussing alt-right's extreme, opinions or so, whatever the fuck. You do not put why are Jews people up on your fucking screen.
It's a discussion. We'll have a debate. This guy says they are. This guy says they're not.
So can somebody write a blog called Are Jews? Absolutely. That is your right.
Well, right.
But
it has
do
to do
we
with
want,
platforming.
Exactly. What do we want to be allowed in the public sphere? What should have the platform? Same thing with fascists speaking at universities. I don't think that should be allowed because the university is giving a platform to amplify these folks that they don't have a natural right to. Free speech should not, and I'm not talking about the law of the United States because fuck the law of the United States. I'm talking about what the kind of society that we want to build. Free speech allows you to speak and to write and to share these ideas. It does not guarantee you a platform on which to do that. So the idea that that you are guaranteed, to speak at a university or to be on national news talking about whether Jews are people, that's not how it works.
Well, and what spurred your article is this idea, and I think it comes from a lot of libertarians and some others, that you should be able to say whatever the fuck you want on any of these platforms, and period. Oh, full stop. And that sounds great in concept. It's easy to be like, I'm for freedom of speech, all speech. But the problem you get is somebody who, let's say, is posting kill all the Jews. And that's why it's not as simple as just, look, I am more, one of the biggest proponents to talk about how this is a slippery slope when you quote unquote cancel someone, when you delete their account, because guess what? It's going to be used against leftists, and it's going to be used against those of us fighting for peace and to end the American empire wars. And it is used against us. But there'd be an easy way to differentiate these, and one of them has to do with I want to kill people simply for who they are. And if you are saying that kind of thing, kill all Jews, or putting forward those kind of ideas, then you are that is a different kind of speech that we do have restrictions on. You also in your article talk about look, we are fine with smoking in this country. Smoking is legal. You can smoke a cigarette. It is legal, yet we have various sliding scales on where certain things can be advertised. You don't see cigarette ads on TV. I don't even know I think you still see them in magazines, but there's a lot of places you can't advertise for smoking. Now, that's not a free speech issue. That's a platforming issue. Do we want to promote the idea of, hey, everybody, start sucking down these cancer sticks? Obviously, we are fine with promoting the military on TV. Join to become a trained killer for us, for the empire. That is fine, apparently, to advertise on TV. So this is a discussion. This is always a discussion. Whereas there's a certain group of people that want to act like, look, this isn't even a debate, all free speech, end of story.
Right. And this is the other point that I make in that article is that, if you are saying that, if you are calling for the violence and the harm and the oppression and the killing or the maiming of somebody or some people, that is not, that is a threat. And actually, even the fucking United States has laws against threatening people. So I think that, and do check out the article because I'm not obviously I'm not discussing the whole entire thing here. But basically, the way that I leave it is that this is going to require some nuance, and I'm sorry, but this isn't a cut and dry black or white issue. It requires nuance that our system cannot give, because our system is not about nuance. And also just, like a kind of like a not a warning, but a heads up that the way to battle fascism is not through censorship. The way to battle fascism is with critical thought and community organizing. So, if you're waving the censorship flag, understand that you will be oppressed under that banner as well. So I think that this is something to watch out for, and just think about, kind of like ruminate on those topics that I too was ruminating on in that article.
Well, and this is why these bigger platforms, and this segues into the next story I was going to bring up. This is why these bigger platforms, Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, they never give a definition of the thing they're going to cancel or suppress, at least not a clear one. It never just says, if you or your organization is promoting the killing of or physical harming of any type of person, then we are, reserve the right to shut you down. Because if that was their definition, then guess what? All of the pro-peace leftists, all of the people revealing the crimes of the empire, all of the people revealing war crimes, talking about what Assange has revealed with WikiLeaks, we would not be suppressed, because we don't fit under that category. And that's why they want it to be vague, so that they can do it to everyone, so that they can stop someone from sharing real emails by the Hillary Clinton campaign about how they're rigging the primaries. They want to use it against far more than just people who want to create violence against a certain type of people. And so this gets into my next story, which Twitter, there's Susie Dawson was covering this, but this is an article talking about Twitter's new security, and they've hired this guy, Zatko, last name Zatko, as a security consultancy. And in this article, which is by Reuters, Zatko said he was committed to improving public conversation on Twitter. He praised a recent move to increase quote-unquote friction by prompting users to comment instead of simply retweeting. So you'll notice that that now you can't just hit retweet. When you hit retweet, it tries to get you to comment. So in the business world of Twitter, they call this creating friction, making it more difficult, because every step you put in the way of someone doing something, it makes it harder. And that's why voting takes 15 steps. It's because they're trying to make it impossible to vote. And a lot of people think like, oh, what's the big deal? So you just have to click retweet twice. But every step really makes it a lot harder. And this is why Twitter has to, plaster redacted tonight with Russian media, like to scare people. Each one of those things is a little more friction to you promoting the ideas that, let's say, I have on my TV show. And so this Zatko guy then says, a next step would be to force people to understand a long conversation before participating in it. Meaning they have to, go through the entire thread if there's a long thread or something. But imagine how much friction that would create for someone who wants to share an idea. You click on a Black Lives Matter thing that says Black Lives Matter protesters are out, and you want to hit retweet. And then it says, okay, you can retweet this, but you've got to read through this entire thread. And so you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and something gets your attention or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you might be devoted enough to get to the bottom and click retweet, but a lot of people are going to be like, fuck this.
Well, it's interesting because it's under the guise of media literacy, because it's promoting this idea that, which I've heard of, like in Democracy 4.0, for instance, where it's like, oh, you have to read through all of the ballot initiatives.
I agree.
Hold on, I'm getting there. Where you have to read through all the ballot initiatives and actually understand the concept before you vote, which I think is good, because right now we have people voting on people and things where they're like, I don't know, I'll just pick a box. But so they're using that same tactic to promote something that actually aligns with censorship, not media literacy. Because if you actually wanted people to read things, then there's a way to, because here's the thing. If I were to make a tweet that says, Blue Lives Matter, again, enough people are going to retweet that while having the, looking through the thread or whatever. They're not learning anything. obviously.
By the way,
because
you
they're-
wouldn't tweet that.
No, I know.
I'm just reminding people.
Because obviously they wouldn't learn anything, because if you learned something, you wouldn't fucking tweet Blue Lives Matter. So, but you can still retweet it. That's not media literacy. It's just adding steps. So I think like they're putting it under the guise of media literacy by saying, "Oh, we want people to learn about things." No, you don't. You want people to show their dedication to, either like extreme bigotry or to, to the Democratic Party or to the Republican Party or to this person that they like, or in your hope to let voices that are already suppressed fall even further down this abyss that you've created, because people aren't going to go through the trouble.
And then the next part of the next sentence in this article is even more awful or threatening to kind of the future of especially leftists, those of us who are speaking outside of the allowable corporate, thought. Zatko said he appreciated Twitter's openness to unconventional security approaches, such as his proposal for confusing bad actors to just rephrase this, intentionally making quote-unquote bad actors confused by manipulating the data they receive from Twitter about how people interact with their posts.
I don't even know what that means.
So it's like, for example, telling them they didn't get many retweets, or telling them they hiding the comments so they think there's no comments. I mean, when this is something that's already done on YouTube, although they obviously won't reveal that it's done, but they'll hide the number or decrease the number of views so that other people like to see that something's popular. It's just a fact of life. And so if you see something has 100,000 views, you think, oh, this seems more legitimate than something that has 5 views. So if YouTube says something has 5 views when in fact far more people have watched it, that helps suppress it. And so that's just one idea of what he means, but confusing people by manipulating the data. Now, here's the thing. Bad actors makes kind of like squishy liberals and maybe a lot of average Americans think, oh, he means evil Russians or evil Iranian hackers or whatever the shit CNN has you afraid of this week. That's what he means by bad actors. Or he probably means white supremacist MAGA people, bad actors. But the truth is, we know from experience, Twitter considers me a bad actor. Right. People, great journalists like Aaron Mate or people at the Gray Zone, bad actors, because they're revealing the crimes of the empire, the crimes of our media, propping up the empire.
Well, this is the point that I make, another point that I make in the article, which is when the government and its friends, big corporations like social media corporations,
and the dark Siths,
Siths are already dark, when they get to decide what the truth is, then that completely just ruins the entire concept of media literacy and media democracy. And who's watching the watchers, right? That's the other point. So yeah, this be very wary of these of this language, this doublespeak, as I believe some dude wrote in a book about the 80s. 1984. Sorry.
Yeah, I get it. I got it.
Got it?
There.
Okay.
All right. I know we only have 2 minutes left, so I'll just say this. This won't take much time, but and it fits under the category of disinfo, so it's on the same topic. But this hilarious 538 article. So 538, most of you know, is a website devoted to polling and statistics, and it's gotten the past 2 presidential elections incredibly wrong, and yet most of our mainstream media ran around acting like 538 is the be-all and end-all for polling. They claimed they're run by Nate Silver. They claim to run 40,000 computer simulations as to what's going to happen in the presidency and other races, and I was looking at those numbers before the election, and they were estimating that Biden had like over 70% chance of winning and like a 50% chance of a crazy landslide. And they were basically completely wrong yet again. They weren't wrong in that Trump won, but they were wrong enough that it shows that their system is horseshit.
Right.
And it's so clear to me that the reason their system is horseshit is because it's impossible to calculate for the number of people purged from the rolls. Millions of people are purged from the rolls, mainly people of color, which means mainly Democrats, which means people who are more so not voting for Trump. And 538 has this article where they say Americans, the title is Americans were primed to believe the current onslaught of disinformation. And it's about, of course, pro-Trump Facebook groups and stuff and the disinfo they're putting out and how Americans are believing it. And oh my God, it's this liberal pearl-clutching article never mentioning that 538 has gotten the past 2 elections ridiculously wrong because they cannot calculate for the number of people purged from the rolls and never admit it, never talk about it, never say, hey, here's why we said Hillary had a 90% chance of winning the election, because we don't understand or are not willing to talk about people purged from the rolls because it undermines the quote-unquote legitimacy of the American electoral system, and they can't have that. So they just never mention it and yet run these fucking simulations that don't account for it, and then they get it wrong every fucking time. They are disinfo. By not talking about that, they are disinfo.
Yep.
And so anyway, I just found that fucking hilarious.
Don't trust 538, folks.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We please, if you feel like you got $1 worth of content, go over to patreon.com/commoncensored and become a member. There's no extra content this week, but we have it almost every week at patreon.com/commoncensored. Eleanor's movie is at hardroadofhope.com. Jen Deerenwater's event is at
crushingcolonialism.org.
crushingcolonialism.org. You can, if you don't have time for the event, you can also just donate over there. And all of Eleanor's work, including the article we spent some time discussing right now, is at artkillingapathy.com. If you were very upset about what we said about free speech, then please read the article first before you send the angry emails.
Yes, thank you.
You can send us topics. I do a lot of live streams and things, and those are all at youtube.com/momentofclarity. And the live streams, because everything's so suppressed on my accounts, the best plan is to go to leecamp.com every day and check for a new one.
Join the mailing list.
My mailing list.
Yes.
You're saying. Yes. That's, yeah.
So you can join mine too.
It's in the sidebar at leecamp.com.
Yeah. Alrighty, folks.
Keep fighting.
Act out.